Ryan Watkins never planned to return to Millwood. 12 years in the Marines, including 3 brutal tours in Afghanistan, had transformed the town's once celebrated baseball star into someone the community no longer recognized, and truthfully didn't want to. The intricate tattoos that covered his arms, back, and neck told a story that Millwood refused to hear. Every trip to Henderson's grocery brought the same cold stares, mothers gently pulling their children aside, as if his presence alone posed a threat. Mornings at Carter's Diner were no better. The room always seemed too quiet when he walked in, as if his silence carried too much weight for anyone to challenge. Ryan took his coffee black, left exact change, and spoke only when necessary. "We don't need his type coaching our kids," Mayor Wilson had declared when Ryan applied for the youth baseball coaching position. The words cut deeper than Ryan let on. Baseball had been his first love, before the Marines, before the desert. The field behind Millwood Elementary was sacred ground, the place where his father had first taught him to pitch, before cancer took the old man at 42. The rejection letter arrived days later, wrapped in the usual corporate excuse. "We have chosen a candidate whose values better reflect the community of Millwood." Ryan folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer, alongside others that had turned him down. The security job at the high school, the county maintenance position, the community college teaching opportunity. Each one said the same thing in different words. "Your service might have been good enough for America, but your appearance isn't good enough for us." Mrs. Abernathy next door was the lone exception. The 80-year-old widow, whose husband had died in Korea, made a point to leave pies on his porch, each accompanied by a handwritten note that always ended with, "Thank you for your service, young man," but one elderly neighbor's kindness couldn't erase the weight of an entire town's judgment. Most days, Ryan worked remotely as an IT specialist, a career made possible by the technical skills he had developed in the military, skills that kept a roof over his head while allowing him to avoid unnecessary interaction. Nights were harder. The silence in his grandmother's old house sometimes grew too loud, pressing in on him with memories and ghosts that refused to leave. On those nights, he'd drive 40 minutes to American Legion Post 118 in the next county, where the air felt different. There, among others like him, the tattoos didn't inspire whispers, they invited stories. Everyone understood the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the scars that never made it to the surface. Etched across Ryan's back was a memorial tattoo bearing 4 names: Turner, Rodriguez, Wilson, and Mackenzie, his squad members who had never made it home. Below them, the words, "Until Valhalla." No one in Millwood had ever asked what it meant. No one had ever wanted to know. I didn't. That changed one Tuesday afternoon, when sirens pierced the air and instinct took over before conscious thought could catch up. The sound of emergency didn't register as danger. It registered as someone needs help. Ryan was already running toward the rising column of black smoke 3 blocks away before he fully realized what was happening. By the time he reached the Mitchells' 2-story home, flames had engulfed most of the first floor. Millwood's volunteer fire department was still struggling to connect hoses, while Amber Mitchell thrashed against Chief Brennan's arm, screaming through sobs. "My daughter's upstairs. Please, she's only 8. "Ma'am, we can't go in yet," Brennan insisted grimly. "The structure's not stable." Ryan pushed through the growing crowd, his voice sharp and steady. "Which room?" Amber froze for just a moment, startled by the man standing before her. The tattooed veteran, the one they all whispered about, but desperation overpowered hesitation. "Second floor, east side, purple curtains," she choked out. "Please." Ryan didn't waste another word. Stripping off his outshirt, he wrapped it around his face and sprinted toward the burning house. "Watkins, goddammit, stop!" Chief Brennan bellowed, but Ryan was already through the front door. The heat slammed into him like a wall, searing his lungs with every breath. He dropped low, crawling beneath the thickest smoke. Embers danced in the air like fireflies from hell. The stairs were partially engulfed, flames licking at the wooden railing. Ryan took them 3 at a time, ignoring the pain as burning debris fell on his exposed skin. The second floor was a maze of smoke and chaos. "Lily," he called, his voice muffled through the cloth. A faint cough answered. He found her curled under a bed at the end of the hall, a small bundle of terror and ash. Her eyes were wide, paralyzed by fear. "I'm getting you out," he said, pulling her close. "Hold on tight and don't let go." She pressed her face into his chest, eyes shut, arms wrapped around his neck like a lifeline. The return trip was worse. Part of the staircase had collapsed, forcing Ryan to leap the gap with Lily clutched to him. Debris rained down, slamming across his back. Pain exploded through his body, but his training kicked in. Pain was information, not an obstacle. The mission hadn't changed. Get the child out alive." When he burst through the front door, smoke billowed around them. His shirt had burned away in places, revealing not only the web of tattoos etched into his skin, but also the fresh burns now blistering across his shoulders and arms. For the first time, Millwood saw Ryan Watkins for who he truly was. Not just a man covered in ink, but a protector, a soldier, a survivor. Amber Mitchell let out a sob and rushed forward, taking her daughter from his arms as the paramedics descended on them both. Ryan stood, adrenaline fading fast, as the pain roared back to the surface. "Second-degree burns on the back and shoulders," one paramedic muttered. "You need the hospital." "I'm fine," Ryan said through clenched teeth, though every nerve screamed otherwise. Chief Brennan approached, his mouth tight, eyes unreadable. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen." "She needed help," Ryan replied simply. As the ambulance pulled away, carrying Amber and Lily to be treated for smoke inhalation, Ryan refused transport. He'd had worse in Afghanistan, much worse. He walked home under the weight of fresh injuries and lingering stares. The whispers trailed him again, but this time, something was different. "Did you see all those tattoos? He ran straight into the fire. What are those names on his back?" For once, the whispers didn't sound like judgment. 24 hours later, Millwood's surprise was just beginning. The Millwood Gazette ran the story the next morning. A cell phone photo captured Ryan, emerging from flames, Lily clutched in his arms. For once, reporter Bill Simmons didn't lead with heavily tattooed. Instead, the article read, "Decorated Marine veteran Ryan Watkins may have drawn on combat experience during yesterday's heroic rescue." Ryan barely noticed. That morning, he stood in his kitchen, shirtless, applying burn cream to his back, gritting his teeth. He had just poured himself a cup of coffee when a familiar sound rumbled up the street. Deep, low, growing louder by the second. Motorcycles, dozens of them. To a Marine, that sound was unmistakable. Ryan moved to the window and stared. The first riders turned the corner onto his street, leather vests marked with military insignias gleaming in the sun. Veterans, men and women whose skin told stories like his own. More bikes followed, until the entire block was lined with them. Ryan stopped counting at 50. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some stepping out onto porches. A tall man with iron gray hair and a spine straight as a flagpole stepped toward Ryan's door. Before he could knock, Ryan opened it and stepped onto the porch. "Sergeant Watkins?" the man said, offering a faint smile that didn't quite hide the weight in his eyes. "Colonel James Hardin, retired. 2nd Battalion. 5th Marines." Ryan stood a little straighter. "Yes, sir?" "At ease, Marine," Hardin replied. "This isn't an inspection." "What is it then?" Ryan asked, eyeing the crowd of veterans now fanned out along his street. "Word travels fast in our community," Hardin said. "We heard what you did yesterday, and we heard how this town's been treating one of our own." He gestured to the others. Every person here has served. Every person here carries ink that tells a story. And every single one of us is sick to death of civilians judging what they don't understand. Another veteran stepped forward, his prosthetic leg gleaming in the sunlight beneath a pair of worn camo shorts. "Sir, the local post confirmed they're joining us. ETA 30 minutes. Ryan shook his head. "I don't want trouble. I'm just trying to live quietly." "No trouble?" Hardin assured him, though something in his tone suggested he wouldn't shy from it if necessary. But it's time Millwood learned what those tattoos really mean. He tapped his own chest, exactly where Ryan's memorial tattoo began. "You're carrying fallen brothers with you, aren't you?" Ryan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The answer was written on his skin. And now, for the first time, Millwood was being asked to read it. Before Ryan could respond, the distant rumble of engines drew his attention. More vehicles began arriving. Pickup trucks and sedans, most sporting military decals and veteran license plates. A man in his 40s stepped forward, hand extended with confident familiarity. "None. Mike Dawson, VFW Post Commander from Riverside. We've been trying to get you to join us for 2 years. "Not much point," Ryan replied curtly. "Millwood doesn't have a post." "Maybe it should," Dawson said, the weight in his voice unmistakable. "There are a lot of vets here, hiding in plain sight, because this town makes them feel unwelcome. That changes today." Ryan looked uncertain, the wall he'd built over the years still firmly in place. "What exactly are you all planning?" Colonel Hardin's expression shifted into something grim and resolute. "Education, Sergeant. The kind that sticks." By noon, Millwood Park had undergone a stunning transformation. Veterans from across the region had set up tents and booths. Flags from every branch of the military rippled proudly in the spring wind. A temporary memorial wall stood solemnly at the park's center, honoring fallen service members. The veterans of foreign wars and the American Legion had hauled in mobile resource centers, offering information about healthcare, housing, PTSD counseling, and benefits assistance. But the centerpiece, the one display that halted Millwood residents in their tracks, was a unique exhibition titled "The Stories Behind Our Ink." Rows of veterans stood beneath awnings, their sleeves rolled up, ready to explain the meaning behind their tattoos. Memorials to fallen comrades, unit insignias, battlefield maps, symbolic dates, mottos, and scars inked into skin told stories more vivid than any pamphlet could. Colonel Hardin, with his well-earned authority and unrelenting presence, had somehow either convinced or intimidated town officials into approving the event. Mayor Wilson wandered the park, clearly uncomfortable, trying to save face by proclaiming it an official Veterans Appreciation Day. But it was clear he had only signed off under pressure, especially when he hesitated every time he passed a heavily tattooed veteran. "Convenient timing," Ryan muttered to Hardin as they watched the mayor awkwardly shake hands with a Vietnam vet whose arms were covered in elaborate inkwork. "Nothing like a little public pressure," Hardin replied with a smirk. "Hard to keep treating veterans like outcasts when 100 of us are standing in your park." More familiar faces arrived. Fire Chief Brennan showed up with his crew, followed closely by Amber and Lily Mitchell. The moment the little girl spotted Ryan, she broke away and ran to him with open arms. "Mr. Watkins?" she cried, wrapping her arms around his waist. "The doctor said I'm all better. Just a little smoke in my lungs, but it's gone now." Ryan knelt slowly, his burned back stiff and aching. "Good to hear, kiddo. Mom says you're a real hero, like in the movies." "Oh, your mom's too kind," Ryan replied, clearly uncomfortable with the compliment. Lily looked curiously at the tattoos on his arms. Her eyes sparkled with innocent wonder. "Your pictures are really cool. The eagle's my favorite. And the names on your back, are those your friends?" The question, so innocent and unfiltered, caught Ryan off guard. No one in Millwood had ever simply asked. Yeah," he said quietly. "They were my friends. They didn't make it home from Afghanistan." Lily reached out and touched the names with childlike reverence. So you keep them with you forever? That's exactly right. Ryan hadn't noticed the small crowd that had begun gathering around them, listening in silence. Among them was Coach Bennett, the man who had been chosen to coach the youth baseball team instead of Ryan. I didn't know, Bennett said, his face tinged with regret. About the names, what they meant. You never asked, Ryan replied, not harshly, but with a quiet honesty. As the afternoon unfolded, more residents began entering the park, drawn by curiosity and the unmistakable presence of something meaningful. Where once people crossed the street to avoid men like Ryan, now they approached with hesitant steps and genuine questions. Children with their innate openness led the way. They asked about the tattoos, about the wars, about what it meant to serve. Ryan found himself surrounded by neighbors who once looked through him, now listening closely as he described the Marine Corps emblem on his forearm, the string of names along his back, the battle map of his first firefight in Helmand Province. One small ribbon near his wrist caught the eye of Mrs. Peterson, a local woman who'd once chastised Ryan for speaking to her son. Wait, is that an autism ribbon? She asked. Yes, ma'am, Ryan said. For my younger brother. He lives with my aunt in Columbus. That's how I recognized the signs in your son last year. Mrs. Peterson's face crumpled with guilt. I'm so sorry. I just assumed... That's the problem with assumptions, Ryan said gently. They don't leave room for the truth. As dusk approached, Colonel Hardin stepped forward and raised his voice. The park hushed. Veterans moved behind him in formation, forming a living wall of brotherhood and defiance. A wall Millwood could no longer ignore. Today, we've shown you the stories behind our ink, Hardin began. Tattoos that honor fallen brothers and sisters, commemorate battles fought, and remember promises made. But there's one story you need to hear directly. He motioned to Ryan, who hesitated before stepping forward, reluctant, but resolute. The man standing before you isn't just a decorated Marine who served 3 combat tours, Hardin said, his voice sharp with conviction. He isn't just someone who risked his life to save a child yesterday. He paused, scanning the crowd. Sergeant Ryan Watkins is the recipient of a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with Combat for Valor. Under heavy enemy fire, he carried 3 wounded Marines to safety before being severely wounded himself. A ripple of astonishment passed through the audience. Hardin continued. Those tattoos you've been judging, each one tells a part of that story. The names on his back, Marines who died beside him when their vehicle hit an IED. That flag on his shoulder, he carried it in his pocket through every mission. Mayor Wilson stepped forward, face taut and posture stiff. On behalf of Millwood, he began, I want to extend our deepest appreciation to Sergeant Watkins and to all veterans present today. It seems we've been less than welcoming. He cleared his throat. I also believe there was a misunderstanding about the youth baseball coaching position. Save it, Hardin cut in coldly. We're not here for hollow apologies. We're here because communities across America are quick to say, thank you for your service, while judging the very men and women who provided that service. He turned and locked eyes with the mayor. Actions matter more than words. As night fell, the veterans gathered for a candlelight ceremony. Each one who bore a memorial tattoo stepped forward to read the names inked into their skin. For every name, a candle was lit and placed at the base of the temporary wall. When Ryan's turn came, he stood tall. Lance Corporal Michael Turner, Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, Corporal James Wilson, Lance Corporal David McKenzie. He reached back and touched each name on his skin. October 14th, 2009. Helmand Province. Our vehicle hit an IED. I was the only survivor. His words were simple, unadorned, but the weight behind them was devastating. After the final candle was placed, as the crowd quietly began to disperse, Amber approached with Lily in tow. "We're having a small gathering next weekend," she said, "to thank everyone who helped during the fire. We'd love for you to come." "I'll be there," Ryan promised. As he walked home that night, flanked by Hardin and several other veterans who had informally appointed themselves his security detail, Ryan noticed a subtle change in his street. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now nodded in greeting. Porch lights, once dark, remained lit as he passed. "They'll forget again," Ryan said softly to Hardin. "Once you all leave, it'll go back to the way it was." That's why we're not all leaving," Hardin replied. "You've got 20 veterans within 30 miles who are tired of hiding. Time to establish a proper VFW post in Millwood, with you as its cornerstone." Ryan looked skeptical. One day doesn't change years of prejudice. "No," Hardin agreed, "but it's a start, and we'll be back in force every 4th of July, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day until this town understands," he gestured to Ryan's tattoos, "that the ink on our skin doesn't define us, but it does tell a story they need to hear." 6 months later, Millwood had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The newly formed Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 4517 met twice a month in the community center, with Ryan Watkins serving as its quartermaster. And while not everyone understood yet, they were listening. And that, finally, was enough to begin. Each meeting welcomed an open invitation for townsfolk to learn about veteran issues and to understand the stories behind their tattoos. Mayor Wilson, sensing the shift in the political winds, had made veteran outreach a cornerstone of his re-election campaign. The local baseball league created a special coaching position for Ryan, focusing on kids with special needs like his younger brother. On a crisp spring morning, Ryan walked to Henderson's grocery store, no longer avoiding eye contact with those he passed. Inside, Mr. Henderson himself nodded from behind the counter. "Morning, Sergeant Watkins. Coffee's fresh." "Thanks," Ryan replied, still adjusting to this new normal. As he strolled through the aisles, he noticed a young man methodically stocking shelves, his movements precise and deliberate. The sleeves of his uniform were rolled up, revealing tattoos similar to Ryan's own, military in nature, each inked symbol carefully chosen with deep meaning behind it. "Afghanistan or Iraq?" Ryan asked quietly. The young man looked up, surprise and recognition crossing his face. "Afghanistan, 2017 to 2019. You same place, earlier war." Ryan extended his hand. "Ryan Watkins, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines." "James Cooper, 10th Mountain Division." They shook hands, a silent bond passing between them, the mutual understanding only veterans share. "Heard this town's becoming a good place for vets." "Getting there," Ryan said. "Still a work in progress." "Aren't we all?" Cooper replied with a half smile. "You're the guy who ran into the fire last year." Ryan nodded. "Right place, right time. That's not what Colonel Hardin says. He's been recruiting vets to move here. Says Millwood is becoming a model for how communities should treat returned service members." Before Ryan could respond, Lily Mitchell bounded down the aisle, her mother following closely behind. "Coach Ryan," Lily called out. "Mom says I can join your baseball team this year. Are you still going to teach us about the special ribbon for people like your brother?" "That's the plan," Ryan confirmed, nodding a greeting to Amber. "We're having a barbecue this weekend," Amber added. "Just a few neighbors and friends. We'd love for you to come." She glanced at Cooper. "Both of you, if you're free?" As they left the store, Cooper gave Ryan a questioning look. "That happens a lot now." "The invitations? More than it used to," Ryan admitted. The fire changed some minds. Veterans showing up in force changed more. And the tattoos. People still stare. Ryan considered the question carefully. They still look, but now they ask instead of judge, most of them. Later that day, as Ryan coached his special needs baseball team, he noticed Mayor Wilson watching from the bleachers. After practice, the mayor approached, looking uncharacteristically humble. Got a minute, Sergeant Watkins? What can I do for you, Mayor? Wilson hesitated. The town council has approved a permanent veterans memorial, something more substantial than the temporary wall from last year's event. He handed Ryan a folder containing design concepts. We'd like your input as the VFW representative. Ryan examined the designs. Looks good. I'll bring it to our next meeting. There's something else, Wilson said, rolling up his sleeve to reveal a small, fresh tattoo, a military insignia. My father served in Vietnam, never talked about it. After he died, I found his medals, his discharge papers. I realized I never really knew that part of him. Ryan looked at the simple ink design. Not elaborate, but meaningful. Good work, he said. Who did it? That Marine who works at the tattoo shop in Riverside. Cooper recommended him. Wilson looked at his arm, almost wonderingly. I think I understand a little better now why you all carry these marks. It's about remembering, isn't it? About honoring. Among other things, Ryan acknowledged. On Memorial Day, the new monument was dedicated in Millwood Park. Veterans from across the state attended, many bearing tattoos that told stories of service, sacrifice, and brotherhood. The polished granite wall listed the names of local veterans who had served, with a special section honoring those who never returned. Ryan stood at the podium, looking out at the gathered crowd. There were familiar faces from town, now friendly instead of fearful. Veterans from that first gathering had returned, many having moved to the area, drawn by the growing community of understanding. Lily Mitchell sat with her mother, wearing a team cap from Ryan's baseball program. 1 year ago, Ryan began, I was invisible in my hometown. The tattoos that tell my story, that carry the memory of friends I lost and battles I survived, made me a stranger here. He looked around at the community that had learned to see beyond skin-deep assumptions. I was just as guilty, he continued. I assumed you'd never understand, so I stopped trying to explain. We built walls between us, you judging my appearance, me judging your judgment. He rested his hand on the memorial wall beside him. The names carved in stone here deserve better than our silence. The stories inked on our skin deserve to be told and heard. Not because they make us heroes, most of us were just doing our jobs, but because they connect us to each other, to our shared humanity. As Ryan concluded his speech, the afternoon sun glinted off the memorial wall, casting reflections across the faces of those gathered. Tattooed and not, veterans and civilians alike, united in a moment that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Lily Mitchell approached him, her expression serious beyond her 9 years. I told my mom that when I grow up, I want a tattoo like yours. Not the big ones, but maybe the ribbon for your brother. Is that okay? Ryan smiled. That's a conversation for you and your mom many years from now. Lily nodded solemnly. Mom says sometimes the most important things aren't visible at all. She touched her chest above her heart. They're in here. But she also said sometimes putting them on the outside helps people understand better. Your mom's a wise woman, Ryan replied. As he walked home that evening, Ryan passed neighbors who called him by name, nodded greetings, or stopped to chat about the upcoming baseball tournament. The tattooed Marine who had once been invisible was now woven into the fabric of Millwood as permanently as the ink embedded in his skin. His phone buzzed with a message from Colonel Hardin. Moving 4 more vets to your area next month. Millwood is becoming the template. Well done, Marine. Ryan smiled, thinking of the VFW meeting planned for that evening and the story circle that would follow. More veterans would share the meanings behind their tattoos, and more civilians would listen and understand. In a world quick to judge by appearance, Millwood had learned a lesson written in ink and sealed by fire. That courage wears many faces, that heroes often go unrecognized, and that sometimes the most profound stories are etched onto the skin of those we've been too afraid to truly see. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.